best life possible. Perspectives. How you think. And a very, very good evening to you, my dear listeners. You are welcome to the Prayer Rally Zone, PRZ 109.2 FM. And this is Perspektives, the program designed to take you one step closer to a better life. And I'm your host, Emmanuel Utomi. This month, we have been discussing the topic relationship, which we defined as the ability or capacity to cultivate and maintain long-time worthwhile associations with yourself, other people, and your environment. And in the first week, we talked about some principles that had to be observed in order to enter into and maintain these worthwhile relationships. Now, while we agreed that there were loads of principles out there that had to be observed, we did discuss a few of them. And one of them we said was choosing your relationships carefully. We said it's tough to rise above the people you take advice from or spend time with the most. Your relationships don't just define you, but they change your personality. You see, the right or wrong choice in relationships has the capacity to massively affect who you become and to even impact on your destiny. One of the other principles we also looked at was that you should realize that not all relationships are designed to last a lifetime. And under that, we said some relationships are going to be seasonal. And holding on to these seasonal relationships when you should have let go, or redefining them, or not redefining these relationships when the time is due, can easily lead to frustration or heartbreak in some cases. We also looked at recognizing and accepting every relationship for what it is as one of the principles. We said as you require people to understand and relate with you, given your likes and dislikes, so you are required to also understand and accept other people first before you even think about trying to change them, if that is even possible. And I remember that the last principle we discussed in the first week was that you observe the heart of the golden rule. And as we all know, the golden rule states that you do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. But we said the heart of the golden rule is just as you want to be treated, so it is with other people. Other people would appreciate it if you would also treat them the way they want to be treated. Of course, by the second week, we examined one of the most important relationships you would ever be involved in. And this relationship defines who you are. It determines how you feel about yourself and how you interpret the world and people around you. And this is the relationship you have with yourself. We called it your personal relationship. You see, as an individual, you have an internal set of both conscious as well as unconscious standards that govern your lifestyle and your worldview. And here the intention is to create and project a particular image of yourself to the world, telling the world this is how you want to be perceived. We call this your self-image. You see, this self-image that you sell to the world around you is heavily influenced by your culture, your past experiences, your religious beliefs, the quality and quantity of education, and even things like TV, newspaper, and radios that you come in contact with. Those things impact on how you see yourself. You see, the truth is, as you grow, you build a wealth of habits that helps you reinforce the idea of the type of person that you think you are. You see, you start to build the picture of yourself that you want the world to acknowledge, accept, and even respect. Last week, we discussed some tips that would help you in your association with other people. So you see, last week we talked about our relationships or your relationship with other humans, other people. So today, we will continue from where we stopped last week with some more tips on how to maintain a human relationship. And then later briefly look at how your relationship with your environment impacts you. My dear listener, I would like to emphasize that these are ideas that have the capacity to deliver a positive change to any relationship, be it your relationship with your spouse, your relationship with your kids, your relationship at work, you name it. These ideas have the capacity to bring a radical change. But it all depends on you being able to put these things into action. So, for today, here we go. The first tip that we're going to be looking at is this: that you invest quality time and resources in developing yourself. The quality of every relationship is actually dependent on the level of maturity and insight of the people involved in those relationships. Now, isn't it interesting that what may cause a major rift in one relationship could actually be laughed off in another? Now, the reason is centered around how well mentally developed and open-minded people are. The more you take out time to grow in knowledge and understanding about people and situations, the more room, literally speaking, you create for the growth and sustainability of your relationships. I bet if you looked into your life right now, you will admit that there are certain things that used to get you upset in the past, but now you laugh over them. Now, that's really funny, because my question is, what happened? You see, since the circumstances are still the same, it means the only reason you can laugh at those things now is because you as an individual, you have grown, you have changed. You see, in the Bible, in reference to marriage, in the book of Genesis, it says that the two shall become one. You see, because you cannot give what you don't have, therefore, you owe it to yourself and to the person you're in a relationship with to identify and make a list of the challenges that you think you're facing. And let me throw that as a challenge to you. If you're in any relationship where you're facing some challenges, identify and make a list of those challenges. I mean, the ones you are currently facing right now. And then grow your capacity to positively handle those issues. Now, this takes us straight to the second idea I want to share with you on how to maintain a worthwhile relationship with someone else. In his book, The 48 Laws of Power, author Robert Greene talks about a Pyrrhic victory. Now, that is when a goal or victory is achieved at too great a cost. You see, you have to learn to overlook certain things, period. And I will say that again. In a relationship, you have to learn to overlook certain things. Or, know when to stop pressing for an outcome. You see, the cost of winning sometimes is not worth it. Some arguments or fights are simply not worth it, because even after you have argued your way to quote and unquote success, where you prove your point and lose maybe peace of mind, you lose the trust, or in some cases even lose the relationship itself. I ask you, so you have won the argument, but I ask you, was winning really worth it in the end? The other angle to this is when we place a demand on someone based on what we think that person should be able to do. You know what? I have since realized that some people have summarily decided to be a certain way, and by default, they do not have the capacity to do or act or say certain things or act in certain ways. Therefore, requiring them to act the way you want would require some good measure of long suffering on your part. What's the worst thing that will happen if you don't bring up an issue or highlight this fault or that fault? Look, I'm not asking you to accept an unprogressive situation or behavior. All I'm saying is that you exercise wisdom in how you handle a misunderstanding or an upsetting situation. Exercise some wisdom. You know, that's life. That's who we are. See, one lesson I learned on this issue came from one of my mentors who said to me one day, he just said, look, Emmanuel, whatever anyone does to you to upset you, regardless of what it is they do, your goal is that you ensure that you never shut any door permanently. And when he said that, I was like, I don't understand what you mean. And he explained, he said, look, regardless of what anyone does to you, ensure that you part ways with them in such a way that if you need their help in future, you can always go back to them. I said, wow, that was for me, that was mind-blowing. And that really defined or redefined how I treat people in relationships, particularly when I have a misunderstanding with them. Now, the third point I want to get across today is that you must learn to forgive others when they offend you, or forgive yourself when you mess up. You see, someone once said that forgiveness is a totally selfish act. It is you freeing yourself from the hold an event or a person has over you. Now, it doesn't mean that what was done to you was right. You are just letting go. Simple. See, perhaps one issue that is common with every relationship is the fact that at some point in time in the life of that relationship, there will be a conflict. Period. There are no ifs, no buts. As long as humans are involved, there would be cause for misunderstanding and disagreement. It's just a question of time. Now, while all of these issues will be resolved, it's the end product of the resolution that might differ from one relationship to the other. The truth is, there will be times when, in your own view, you have been treated wrongly or even unfairly. But the challenge is carrying that feeling of hurt days, weeks, months, and in some cases years after the issue has occurred. And in some cases, the other party may have even forgotten the issue in question. I remember my wife doing something that I particularly didn't like. And as a result, I decided that I'm not talking to her. And that was the decision I came up with. Now, the challenge here is that my wife is what you would call the free-spirited sanguine. Literally nothing bothers my wife. She has a way of always seeing the lighter side of things. So, here I was, 3 days after she supposedly offended me, 3 days after I was not talking to her. And by the way, realize what I've said. I was the one not talking to her, at least in my mind. I was giving her the silence treatment, as some would popularly say. But the challenge was this. She wasn't behaving as though anything was wrong. In fact, if anything, she was seriously having a nice time. And that really made me feel really, really bad. And I couldn't take it anymore. Because here I was trying to get my point across to this woman by keeping quiet, and she wasn't having any of it. So one day, and it's one of those nights, before she would go to sleep, as she would do soundly, I told her that she couldn't sleep. So I informed her that I was upset with her about something she had done. And I told her about what she did, and she listened to me attentively as I expressed my disapproval at her behavior. And when I was done speaking, her response shocked me. In the first place, not only does she not remember the incident that I was upset about, she didn't even notice my supposed silent treatment for the last 3 days. You know what, my dear listener? That was the day I made a promise to myself to uphold what the Bible says in the book of Ephesians chapter 4 and verses 26 to 27. You see, in the Message translation, it goes this way. It says, "Go ahead, be angry. You do well to be angry, but don't use your anger as fuel for revenge. And don't stay angry. Don't go to bed angry. Don't give the devil that kind of foothold in your life." You see, here I was, being upset with someone. I was feeling bad because I was upset. But she didn't know I was upset with her. So while I was feeling bad, she was having a nice time because she didn't know. Listen, these days, if you upset me, you know what I do? I tell you. And as a result of telling you, maybe we have an argument about it or just a chat. But once I leave there, I leave everything there. The whole stuff stays there. You see, unforgiveness is like cancer that spreads. Have you noticed that it tends to affect other aspects of the relationship with the person involved? So someone says something in a relationship that upsets you. Suddenly, everything else they do is colored. Someone once said that holding on to an offense committed against you and choosing not to forgive is like taking poison and hoping that the other person will die. You know it doesn't happen like that. So please, forgive. Let it go. And when you mess up, forgive yourself and move on. The fourth point I want to share with us is that you can check the health of most relationships by the volume of laughter and communication involved. See, from my own personal experience, I have noticed that anytime my wife and I have a disagreement, or more appropriately, let me be open here. When I feel that she has upset me, it is sometimes followed by what I call a cooling off period, where in most cases our level of communication and laughter significantly drops, just like the example I gave earlier. But then it gradually picks up as we mend the fences. But you see, the challenge with this silent treatment, as some have come to call it, is the fact that it can be a double-edged sword. And this is what I mean. If properly used, it could be a time of reflection on what happened. It could be a time of lesson, of learning what went wrong, and how to learn from that to strengthen the relationship going forward. But on the other hand, if it is not properly handled, it could be used as a time to stack up reasons to discredit the other person. My dear listeners, listen. The fastest way to restore a difficult relationship is to open up the lines of communication and laughter as fast as possible after a perceived offense. Now, the last hint I'm going to give us before we move on to how to relate with your environment, is that you should realize that it always takes two. Now, what do I mean? In one of my early broadcasts, or in my early days as a speaker and as a personal development trainer, I always looked forward to the time of question and answers, the question and answer session. I was always eager to offer my opinion in answer to questions. But as I grew in wisdom, and particularly after gaining my certification as a coach, I since realized that the average person is very selective in their choice of words, particularly when asking questions about relationships. You see, people have a tendency to edit out certain bits that shine the light on their faults, or they might frame their questions in ways that politely encourages you to grant them the approval they need to continue in their ways. As a rule, I challenge opinions and I ask further clarification questions. And based on several years of experience, I can categorically state that when there's a problem in any relationship, it is near impossible for the entire fault to be one-sided. It's not possible. Both parties would have done or said something to create the issue, no matter how small. So here's my take. The next time you feel offended by the other person, take a step back and ask yourself this question when you cool down. How have I contributed to this misunderstanding? You see, regardless of how right you know you are, if you can find some aspects where it is your fault, it makes it easier to start the process of forgiving the other person for the offense. Remember, it takes two to tango. Now, the last aspect of our definition is that of relationship with your environment. You see, in the same way that you relate with yourself and other people, and these relationships impact your life, similarly, there are inanimate objects or situations that you as a person you have built close relationships with, and whose impact on your life in some cases may be far more stronger and may far outweigh the relationships you have with other human beings. What do I mean? See, throughout human history, no other generation has leaned more on items and gadgets in defining itself like this generation we find ourselves in. With technological advancement, there has been a gradual increase in our dependence and effectively a shift in how we engage with each other. See, one aspect of human life that has experienced probably the highest change due to technology is our communication. And the gadget leading the way is the mobile phone. See, as a result of this one gadget and the technology backing it, the way we communicate and keep in touch and ultimately relate with each other is being redefined, or in fact has been redefined. The phone has become like breath to some people, something that some people cannot leave home without, and in some cases cannot even sleep without. I want to give you an assignment, and this is the assignment. I need you to calculate the total amount of time you spend on your phone, either making calls, getting on social media platforms, and so on and so forth. And I want you to compare that time, compare this amount of time that you spend on your phone with the relationship that you have with other people. So the question here is this: do you spend more time on your phone than you spend with people physically? The other side of this task is, how many times do you get distracted by your phone when you're actually talking to someone face to face? You see, if the amount of time you spend on your phone is more than the time you spend with actual humans, then I advise that it is time you start defining the type of relationship you have with your phone. You know what? Let me clarify this. My recommendation is that you redefine your relationship with your phone, not give it up. Get a piece of paper, draw a line down the center, and on one side, make a list of positive changes, and on the other side, negative changes. Then pick another piece of paper and write out how you intend to overcome the negative changes in your life that has come up as a result of your use of a mobile phone. Make no mistake, the phone has become a vital aspect of our lives. And this is just the start of its intrusion. But here's the question. How productive has your life become as a result of owning a phone? Another question I have on a similar gadget is this. What type of relationship do you have with your television set or with certain programs on TV? I recall a cartoon that was released during the last FIFA World Cup. It was a man with a can of spray paint marking the floor of his house around the TV set, like referees did or do now when they mark lines for those defending a free kick. And here he was informing his wife that you cannot cross this line. You see, the level of attendance and attention and devotion that some people put into some TV programs is impressive. They can go hours non-stop, or for some even days. And when they are watching these programs, you cannot talk to them. In fact, you might be termed the Antichrist for interrupting them. Listen, don't get me wrong. Not all addictions are bad. But when it is stopping you from making progress, then maybe it is time to re-examine the direction the addiction is leading you. So here's a question for you to consider. What are some of the inanimate things in your life that have greatly impacted on the direction of your human relationship? See, as I draw to an end of our discussion on relationship, I'd like to share this experience with you. See, many years ago, I realized that you can do everything. You can apply all the principles that govern relationship. Observe all the tips written in every book on earth on relationship. Do everything right on your part to ensure a worthwhile relationship. And many other things possible to maintain the health of your relationship. But you and I know that all this does not guarantee that the relationship will turn out the way you want. You see, as I discussed in one of the points earlier, it takes two parties to make any relationship work. While you can guarantee your motive for going into a relationship, you cannot say the same for the other party or the other person. I am sure you may have heard of stories where a relationship was thought to be going on well, then suddenly, boom, everything just falls apart. The question here is, what actually happened? No human knows what is going on in the heart of or mind of another human being. But I know someone who does. And someone who knows what's going on in the heart and minds of every human being on earth. And you know what? His name is Jesus Christ. He is so good at touching and changing lives that if you can commit to cultivating and maintaining a worthwhile relationship with him, he will change your life and change your relationship for the better. As you listen to me today, I'd like to say, give your life to Jesus. And I hope all this will go down well with you. My dear listener, I'd like to say thank you for your time and have a blessed week. God bless you.
How you think powers your mental views, your actions, and your ultimate reality. Join me, Emmanuel, Utomi, every Sunday from 8:30 to 9 p.m. on PRZ 109.2 FM London as we explore how to live your best life possible. Perspectives. How you think.
We give you praise, we exalt your name, we thank you, Lord. I welcome you to Prayer Rally Life Conference. Today is the day, is the battle of Ziklag. The Lord honor you as you step in. This is the gathering of the warriors. This is Prayer Rally gathering of the warriors. Today is going to be glorious in the mighty name of Jesus.